The GR3X sat in a really strange place for me for quite some time. The time that I got it, I thought it was a brilliant little pocket camera, great for its compactness and its practicality, and I still do. However, I got the GR3X, which has the 40mm equivalent lens on it, as opposed to the GR3, which has a 28mm lens. And I did that because I didn't really shoot wide that much. So it made sense for me to get the 40mm version because I felt like I would use the camera a lot more doing so. I used it quite extensively on my trip to Lisbon. It was actually the main camera I used on that trip, and I used it a lot in Morocco. Specifically in Marrakesh, it was incredibly useful to have the GR just to, shoot in that really tight, super busy environment and just be very inconspicuous with the way I was shooting. But since that trip, I've found myself using the GR less, and it kind of just became another camera in my kit. It wasn't serving any real valuable purpose other than it being a compact camera, which, don't get me wrong, it's very valuable to have, I think, but not so valuable if you're not using it. Just recently, on my Japan trip, I really found myself yearning for a point-and-shoot film camera to document like these in-between moments where, just hanging out with friends, documenting the food I was eating, whatever kind of interesting space I was in. A wide-angle lens would have been great to photograph and document those things, and so that kind of got me thinking, what if I swapped the GR3X for a GR3, the 28mm version? So that's what I did. There's certainly a reason a lot of photographers in New York City use a wide-angle lens for street photography here. The city is so chaotic, so random. A wide-angle lens is ultimately going to be the kind of lens you're going to want to use to be able to react and photograph spur-of-the-moment scenes with speed and accuracy. When it comes to wide-angle lenses, there are two popular favorites amongst photographers, a 28mm and a 35mm. Both of them offer a pretty wide field of view. Obviously, one is wider than the other. So it really comes down to personal preference on what you prefer better for the kind of shooting you like to do. I asked a bunch of you on Threads, what is the deciding factor between choosing a 28 versus a 35, other than the fact that one is wider than the other? And it seems pretty split between the two. Some of you feel the 28 lets you get closer and create a more dramatic feel in a photograph, while 35 is great for those who want balance of distance to the subject and filling the frame. And a lot of you mentioned comfort, just being used to a certain focal length, and that's just what you're accustomed to, which makes a whole lot of sense. So, as you guys know, if you've been following me for the past couple of years, I don't really shoot like this, so it's a bit of a change, big change of pace for me. But I'm interested to see how I fare shooting with a 28. Specifically for street photography versus using this camera as like a documentary camera. Light's pretty decent right now. Starting in Chinatown, just because I'm very familiar shooting in this area, so it makes sense to set myself up for success shooting somewhere I know I might get some good photographs first, and then probably make our way up more towards Midtown where a lot of photographers shoot. But there's a reason for that, because there's just so much foot traffic on those streets, a lot of moments happening, so see how it goes. The biggest challenge for me is just getting close enough to people and whatever I'm photographing, because I'm so used to shooting at a distance. So it's going to be the biggest challenge for me. Like the color contrast between this red and green steps. Could get someone to walk towards me, just to have another element to this frame. Might work out. Of course, absolutely nobody here. So I've set my shutter speed to 1/500th of a second, and then I've set my aperture to f8. And I'm letting the ISO stay on auto and do its own thing. I've also switched to highlight metering mode, so that way the ISO is going to expose automatically for highlights. I think I might hang out on this corner. I think I'm gonna be heading to Midtown a lot sooner than I thought I was. Kind of like the reflections on the wall here, and with this guy here on the phone, like the red phone. He hasn't noticed me yet, so I'm just gonna chill out here. I think the violin's out of tune. I'm gonna start making my way to the train. Head up. Not really seeing anything. Union Square. Just gonna walk up Broadway. There's literally nothing going on. This is not going so well. To avoid Times Square right now, but let's go through it. Let's see what happens. So yeah, the biggest struggle was exactly what I thought it would be. Getting close enough to what I was photographing, the subject, and trying to stay anonymous and not disturb or get noticed by people. I lucked out a few times, but yeah, it was still difficult for me to do that. I feel like 35mm would have been the nice sweet spot for me to maintain a healthy distance between me and the subject matter without getting noticed, and while still being able to compose an image without a whole lot of dead space. Obviously I can crop into these images, but I have been leaning on trying to crop less. I used to crop a lot, and I don't know, I kind of want to challenge myself to get the composition, the frame, and everything as best as I can in camera first. So I feel like a 35 would probably suit me better when it comes to street photography with a wide angle. Also trying to find interesting moments where a 28 would, suit the photograph. I use longer focal lengths because I work with the environment, working with abstraction and shapes and light, and a tighter field of view helps me with creating those kinds of images. And with the 28, I have a whole lot of extra nonsense in my frame that it can make it very difficult to find a clean composition and just make something that I feel works with that approach to street photography. That's why I always felt like a lot of people who shoot in New York, they and use a 28mm lens or a 35, their main subject matter are people and moments that they're seeing, not so much what I do. And I think that just brings me back to the whole bigger idea of focal length and how much of a factor it plays in your workflow and in what you want to create and what you want to photograph. I think I mentioned this in like an older video, but the whole idea of like gear doesn't matter kind of ignores the whole fact that the lens you use, the focal length you use, is probably one of the biggest or most important factors in photography, especially street photography. This kind of shooting I just did in this video, I can't do that with a 90, let alone probably even a 50mm lens. It's going to be difficult to quickly react and photograph those kinds of things with accuracy because, I might miss because I have so little space to work with in the frame. Whereas a 28, I have so much more freedom to react and know confidently that what I'm photographing is going to be in my composition. So a wide angle, telephoto, they're completely two different tools and they shine best in certain situations. So don't overlook that at all when it comes to what lens you're using. Forget image quality about the lens. It's really just about the focal length that matters. But as it relates to the GR, I'm fine that it's a 28 because really, like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm kind of leaning towards using it as a documentary camera for just random moments I might come across while I'm traveling or hanging out with people. I feel like a 28 would suit me best for those situations anyway. Probably won't be picking up this camera with the intent of doing street photography all that much. I think I'm very comfortable still shooting at 50mm for most of my work. But I do see myself, slowly inching a little bit wider here and there. So, and a pocket 28, you never know when you want to whip out a 28mm. This is New York City after all, and I'm starting to realize that the most interesting thing about this city is the people and the craziness that happens, and having a camera that is well suited to photograph those kinds of things is nice to have.
A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. I've been a Squarespace user for the last 7 years, using it as a professional space for my favorite works, as well as an e-commerce store to help fund my business as a solo photographer and YouTube creator. You don't need any prior website design knowledge to get yourself started. They have several easy-to-use templates, as well as the ability to truly customize your website to your own tastes. If it sounds interesting to you, you can try them out for free by visiting squarespace.com/Faizal, and make sure to use the code Faizal at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase.